So why are we here? Are we a part of some social club that likes to come together, meet, talk about ideas, not move anything forward? Or are we a group of people that is ready to move the liberty movement forward? Why are you here today? 3%. 3%. 3%. I want to keep this brief because I want you to remember what I have to say. I know I might be a preacher and we get long-winded, but I promise you I won't get that way today. I got 3 things for you. 3 things. 3 things for the Libertarian Party of Arkansas to do. That we need to do. Number 1, further the cause of liberty. Number 2, of course, grow the party, and I see evidence of that right now. Number 3, this should be something that every human being does. We want to avoid the mistakes of the past. How are we going to further this cause of liberty? How are we going to do it? We need to stop thinking in terms of allies and enemies. We need to start thinking in terms of solutions, because that is what the people want to hear. They want to hear solutions. They're sick of this game that's continually played by the ruling class and their crony corporate media partners. It's a game. Furthering the liberty movement starts right here in this room with the people in this room today. It starts right here. I like a good debate. I like to argue. There's nothing wrong with that.
I know that's right.
He does know that. We argue all the time. But after that, we put it aside because we focus on the main thing, is that we're working together to accomplish a goal, furthering the liberty movement. There comes a time when it's no longer fruitful to just argue and debate over intellectualism. We got to get to work. And I have to tell you, I don't really care about personality conflicts with people on Twitter I don't know. I'm just got to tell you the truth. What I'm concerned about is what the Libertarian Party of Arkansas is going to do. I care about furthering that movement, 3%. I'm not going to let that negativity affect me or throw me off my goal, our goal. And that is to make sure that liberty prevails. We also, obviously, are growing the party, not just in numbers, but in the diversity of political skill. If you understand what I mean. There's a lot of people that are candidates. The party historically has been made up of a lot of candidates. But we need some other people now. We need people that can be press secretaries. We need people that can write opinion pieces for our candidates. We need strategists. We need outreach team. We need operatives. If we are ever going to compete on the level that the major parties compete, we need to increase our skills. We need to be able to present ourselves to the electors in a manner which they are accustomed to. You understand what I mean? But we do it in our own style. We do it in our own style. We need to be professional. We must be as professional as we can. Because they already see us as wackos, right?
Right.
Let's not prove them right. The people must know that we hear them. We hear their concerns. We want to represent them. And I believe that libertarianism has an important part to play in this government. For us just to say, no, you're wrong, it cuts off the real connection we can make with the electorate. Because even though we are human beings and we have the capacity to reason, we also have a great capacity for emotion as well. And I can tell you the major parties are continually playing on those emotions. They're playing on everyone's emotions. People are sick of that. We have to make a connection with the people, 3%. We have to avoid making the mistakes of the past. I know some people might not like to hear this, but our actions do affect the people that we are associated with.
All right, good morning,
That's just the
everyone
truth.
at the
You can't escape.
PA.
There's some things that people see and agree with that aren't right, but it is the world that we live in. So I say to my brothers and sisters right now in this room, let's work together. Let's try to represent one another better. Let's throw off this self-importance. I'm telling you this right now. This political idolatry that's going on in this country is bad. If we are ever going to accomplish our goal, we have to be humble. If we are ever going to be a check on authoritarianism, we have to be humble. Because power will corrupt your soul. And you have to be people of integrity. You have to look those temptations in the face and say no. Because we're principled and we want to do the right thing. %. Let's get some libertarians elected.
Thank you, Ricky. That's a great way to start our convention. We're all now in the mood. Let me take the gavel in hand and call this meeting to order. The bylaws call for the first order of business at an annual convention to be opening ceremonies. Now, I have in the past, in jest, suggested that we all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, but that joke went out like a lead balloon. So I won't even try this time around. But what I do think is appropriate is if I spend a couple minutes giving you the perspective from the chair, what is the state of the party. And because I'm an economist, I have a slideshow with charts and graphs to show you. Go along with it. And let's see, do we have the clicker? I can even turn the slides. Well, you know, I think Ricky touched on this and welcomed it with his remarks this morning. But I think if you had to pick one word to describe the Libertarian Party of Arkansas over the past year, since the last time we got together, it is growth. We have been in the growth mode pretty much for the past 15 months. Whether it's the Joe Jorgensen campaign, the people that were electrified by Ricky's campaign, other people joining the party. It's just been a period of tremendous growth, and that's fabulous. It's not, and not just in membership, but in terms of development and skills and building teams and geographically spreading around the state, it's been a wonderful thing. Here we see our election results from last year. Growth, lines are going up. The green line is the percentage of votes that Libertarians received in statewide or in all places around the state. That hit a new high of 15%. The purple line is the number of votes. We're down a little bit, but that's only because it was a non-constitutional officer election year. Next year, we have some people running for things like Secretary of State or State Treasurer. We'll get some of those votes up there, so we can see the seesaw pattern. The election results were remarkable. I think one of the things that you might note about the list of candidates here is the percentages that received and how many of them were in two-way races. That most of our candidates were in a position of providing the voters a choice that they otherwise would not have had. The incumbent would have just been swept into the office by acclamation. And we're getting noticed. Not only did Ricky get nearly 400,000 votes, we had Judy Bowers at 25%, but Stephen Edwards on there set his own, or broke his own record for the highest percentage in a congressional state house race. It was at 32.5%. And just to show how valid we are on the local scale, Zach Molson, without doing much campaigning at all, got 40% of the vote. So we're in a growth mode. We're going to keep building from here. Okay. Okay. In terms of membership, it's just remarkable. A year ago, we were hovering around 80 to 90 dues-paying members of the state party. As of 2 days ago, when I took this, we were at 149. Our national membership numbers are similarly increasing. We were a year ago about 110. Now we're up to 150 national members. And so for those of you who aren't aware of our kind of dual membership structure, if you're a dues-paying member of the National Party and you live in Arkansas, you're automatically a member. So we have a combination of those who directly pay dues and those who are members of the National Party and those who are both. But the more people we have in the National Party, the more seats we have at the national conventions and their delegations. So that's the important part of being a national member. And we've grown in terms of our affiliate structure. A year ago, we had 7 fully organized affiliates around the state. Now we have 9 with the addition of Washington and Baxter counties in just the past couple of months. We did have a couple in progress, Saline and White County.
Missing a few on there for progress, but we're close.
Well, as far as fully organized,
Yeah,
we're up to 9. So, and we covered about, I calculated out, I think about 80% of the state's population are in those 9 counties that are organized. So, we're making progress there. And as I said, our campaigns are growing in sophistication and specialization. I was very impressed with a number of campaigns this year. John and Judy Bowers did a fantastic job of organizing a campaign, given the budget that they had to work with. And of course, Mr. Harrington had the resources to put together a whole campaign team that was working on his behalf, and that was wonderful to see. Leah Gabbard was our state coordinator for the Joe Jorgensen campaign, and was, as a matter of fact, so resourceful that we got a visit from not only Joe Jorgensen, but Spike Cohen as well. I think that's the first time we've had both on the top ticket people come to Arkansas and say campaign. Now, a couple of other pieces of ongoing business that I probably ought to update you on. The first is the Libertarian Party of Arkansas had Al v. Thurston in our lawsuit. As you may know, we sued the state and they raised the petition threshold for becoming a new political party from 10,000 to effectively 27,000. We got a court injunction to make 10,000 acceptable for the Libertarian Party. And that case is still in progress. We won an appeal in the 8th Circuit, and it's now going into final closing arguments. The last thing that happened was at the end of January, the attorneys had a meeting with the judge, came up with a list of stipulations, statements of fact that everyone agrees on. And one of the things that the state agreed with us on was that the judge's injunction continues to be in effect. So the Libertarian Party can still collect 10,000 signatures and be on the ballot for 2022 while the case continues to proceed. The wheels of justice grind slowly. I think our first motion is due in 10 days. Then the state has 30 days to respond, then we have 30 days to respond, and they have 30 days to respond. And I think that's getting us into September or October before we finally find the final resolution of this. But, that's where we stand on that. The LPAR petition drive is in progress. We began on April 1st, and so we've completed 6 weeks and 3 days. We're just about exactly at the halfway point in terms of the 90-day window that the current laws provide for us. And we're a little bit behind. This is not the best news I have to share with you today. Our paid petitioner effort, we're shooting for 12,000 within the 3-month period. We're just shy of 4,000 right now. Now, that is an issue that we are addressing. As a matter of fact, there are 2 additional paid petitioners on the road as we speak. I just heard from one saying that he's going to be here tomorrow morning. The other one, I think, is going to be here Monday. So we're basically doubling our staff of paid petitioners out on the streets. So that's really going to help. The volunteer signatures have been trickling in. We're counting on 2,000, and we've got 274 so far. But I have a feeling that a lot of you might have brought some signatures with you today. So we'll get a more up-to-date count after we get done here. And I can't emphasize enough that if you've got some free time, if you know some folks, take these out, go to the local farmers market, carry a petition board with you, and just ask people to sign the petition. That's what it takes, is just to ask. And like fundraising, you gotta ask if we're gonna give you money. I think that's all that I had to talk about in my opening remarks. I guess we'll move on to the first order of business this morning, which is going to be the adoption of the rules of order of the convention. Before we do so, let me point out that the bylaws have a limit on who can vote at these conventions. If you're a dues-paying member of the party for the past 60 days, you automatically are a voting member. Now, if you have joined within the past 60 days, and given the pace of our growth, I think there are a number of you who fall into that category. We do have a provision that allows for everyone who is a current member to be able to vote at the convention, to basically bypass that 60-day limit. But that's not automatic. So at this point, if there is anyone who would like to make a motion to grant voting privileges to those who are currently members of the party, regardless of their tenure in the party, this would be the time.
So motions and rules.
Well, I don't think that we don't have to suspend the rules anymore. We have it in the bylaws.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if you're making the motion,
I would like to make that motion. I want to put my name on it.
Second. I'll second.
we got seconds. All right. Is there any discussion? Does anyone have an opposing point of view? I think we should be more restrictive. Be careful who let into this club here. All right. All in favor of that resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very good. So now, if you are a dues-paying member of the party, but you don't have a little star on your name tag, Miranda's going to have to get you a star so that the tellers will eventually be able to tell the voting members from the our visitors and guests.
Can we have them just come back to?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you don't have a star and you deserve one, at some point find your way back to the back desk. It won't be really important until we have some secret ballot votes coming up later on. But get that taken care of, and we'll have everything on credentials. And thank you very much to Miranda Corwin for leading our credentials committee today. All right, we got the voting thing worked out. The first order of business is to adopt the rules of order for the convention. That should be issued. It's in your folder. I sent these out to all the people who had signed up earlier this week. If you've had a chance to look it over, I wanted to see it's all tedious procedures. These rules are basically just fleshing out the rough outline that the bylaws provide for guiding our activities today. Basically, the first rule talks about the timetable, the schedule for the day. So the rule of the day, voting procedures and motions. Rule number 2, with a group this big, we'll probably use ordering to vote by show of hands in most of these votes. Rule number 3 is a little bit specialized this year. There are some bylaws amendment proposals to consider, and we'll have those presented by the people who put them together. It's not a formal bylaws committee, but a collection of people who took an interest in making sure our bylaws were up to date and improved given our current growth period. And then rule number 4, the procedures for the election of party officers. I want to go through all these in great detail. Rules of order for our convention are made to be broken. We can always suspend the rules if we want to consider things in different orders, things like that. Is there anyone who would like to make any statement or comment about the rules of order? I guess, first of all, is there a motion to adopt these as the rules of order? Joe has made a motion, second around the room. Very good. Is there anyone who would like to speak either in favor or I guess against, if there's anyone who has a concern with these rules? We can amend them. Very well. All in favor of adopting the rules of order for today, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. We have our marching orders. The next item on the agenda is the Secretary's report on actions taken by the State Executive Committee. I was under the impression that Casey was going to be here this morning to deliver that report, but I do not see him in attendance, and I don't know, has anyone heard from Casey? He said he wasn't. He said he was not coming. Okay. All right. The actions of the Executive Committee, we did some stuff. We approved the new 2 new affiliates. We adopted a temporary change to the bylaws that we're going to have to address here today. And some other things that probably aren't reversible, like deciding to have a convention here and things like that. If anyone's aware of any actions taken by the Executive Committee that you disapprove of, they can be rescinded and overturned at this time. If anyone would like to raise an objection to anything the Executive Committee's done over the past 15 months. Joe objects to it all. Too bad. All right. The Treasury report on money collected, money spent, and money remaining. The Treasurer is having money handed to him right now. We'll call Stephen up here and have him give this report.
Stephen Wade.
Our illustrious treasurer, Stephen Wade. What do you have to do?
Well, first of all, I don't have a pretty presentation like mine was. I just want to go over what we have collected, what we've spent the last year, what we have on hand. We raised about $25,000 in the last year. Looking at a period from May of 20 to the end of April of this year. Special thanks to Ricky for donating to the surplus campaign funds for this last run. That was a big part of also, big thanks to everybody that donates regularly or even annually. Yeah, it's a big part of that as well. We've spent about a little under $10,000 in the last year. In that same period, that's already started to get a little bit of the petitioning. About half of that $10,000 has actually been spent in the last month. petitioning is always the most we spend in a 2-year cycle getting on the ballot. Probably looking at $40,000 or so this time around. That's what we're expecting. Currently, we have about $22,000 on hand. We do have that broken up between federal and state funds. State level, we have 16,000, and federal, we have 6,000. That's due to finance laws. That is about everything I have. I'll turn it back over to Michael.
So as you can tell, it's going to be expensive to finish off this campaign for petition signatures. So please give generously and give often. At lunchtime, I'll be recognizing all of our Torch Club members, the monthly donors that really keep this organization moving along. But that's, as Stephen pointed out, this is the time of year, the time of the campaign cycle, when we're spending money hand over fist to get on the ballot. Let's see, the next item on the agenda is a report of the Bylaws Committee and action on its report. We had a Bylaws Committee, they never really kind of got off the ground. There were a couple of things that we thought were urgent to be considered. And so we had a special executive committee meeting on February 13th, just before the 90-day cutoff before the convention for proposals to be made. And several people attended and participated in that. We did have a quorum of the executive committee who endorsed these as proposals for amendments to the bylaws. And I guess what I'd like to do is, as we go through these proposals, ask the member who sponsored it or who had the idea in the first place, come up and help present what the proposal is and what the rationale is for it. Changes to the bylaws require a 2/3 vote. And they are amendable throughout the rest of the day. Let's see, our first one, I believe Michael Flagius was the instigator on this one. If you could come up here or maybe speak from the floor as to the logic behind this. And do we have proposal number one?
Do I need a microphone or can everybody hear me just fine? The first proposal on here, and before I get started, I'd like to say that when I first came into the party, Mr. Bowers chaired the bylaws committee, and he did an awesome job. And then I kind of took over after that and did a really crappy job. So I was glad to hand it off last year, but then that kind of didn't get done either. So if John would like this committee chair back, maybe he can do that. If he does not, if someone else will please head this up and keep it going. Because the last couple of years, we haven't found anyone to fill John's shoes. But the first proposal that we had was kind of housekeeping. It's just some language that was pretty vague and could cause problems on nominating. So it was just striking the who must be approved and replacing it with unless so that it's clear, it's not vague. So it's just housekeeping. It doesn't change anything that we do. It's not changing any rules. It's just rewording something that we worded poorly the first time.
It was basically grammatically incorrect and difficult to understand the way it was written. I don't see this as a big controversy. Is there anyone who would like to suggest a better way to fix this or amend the amendment? Let's go ahead and put this one to a vote. This one's easy, I guess. This requires 2/3, so let's do it by a show of hands. All in favor of adopting proposal number 1, please raise your hand. All those opposed? It looks like it goes with 2/3, all right. So 1 down, 3 to go. That one was the easy one. It's proposal number 2 is a little bit longer here. This is a summary on the screen. The full text is in your handouts and was mailed to you. Now this, I guess I started this one by proposing that we cut the last 2 sections of the county affiliate requirements. Basically because the laws they referred to have been amended and those are no longer the deadlines that are appropriate. Plus they are only relevant when we become a so section 101 political party, that is, we'll get 3% and have automatic ballot access. So the second part of this is strike number 12 and 13, and to replace them with, at times when the party has status as a political party, each county committee shall conduct its business in accordance with applicable law. And for the most part, that applicable law has been rewritten to say that whatever the party rules say are the way things should be done. Both Democrats and Republicans seem to agree that they wanted to settle on that kind of language. So that's basically it was that. Now, while we were at it, I believe it was Mr. Butterbow who proposed that we do a little bit more hacking and cutting. And Chris, maybe you could speak to that.
All right, everybody hear me okay? All right, so we started with items 12 and 13. And as we were going over and discussing this, I'm reading through the rest of the bylaws concerning county executive committees. And I was like, well, why do we have to impose that they have to meet no less than one time per quarter? Why do they have to convene official business in open meetings? Why do they have to constitute a quorum of membership, create subcommittees? We're libertarians. Why are we going to tell our county affiliates how they have to structure and how they have to run their business? That can be handled they have to submit bylaws to XCOM and be approved, and then they're adopted. So why don't we let the county affiliates organize the way they want to organize and hold their business when they want to hold their business without the state party telling them when and where they can do that? So let's just start.
Why don't the state executive party have to approve county bylaws to begin with?
Well, that's already in there, that they have to, the county affiliates have to submit bylaws to the XCOM and they have to be approved.
Why? To be affiliated with the state party. Why does it be approved? To be affiliated. So you can make a living.
Yeah, we don't want somebody to just form a group and say, we're a libertarian affiliate and not have approved bylaws and not be libertarians at all and just say they're libertarian.
What libertarian things that,
Maybe you can call it recognize.
recognize, yes, I agree, recognize.
Well, that's, I guess, part of the approval process, the recognition process is having that stamp of approval on the county's bylaws. It was a similar structure where we are affiliated with the national organization, and they monitor what changes we make to our bylaws, and make sure that we're not becoming a renegade organization or something like that, I guess.
Well, great for the renegades.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I would like to point out, when I brought Leveldo up to talk about this, I wanted to point out that when Craighead County came up with the first draft of their bylaws and sent it to the executive committee, it was, we do what we want. I asked him to flesh it out just a little bit. So we have these kind of really two sets of recommendations. One are the more legal requirements, and the second part that we replaced with a general statement. We also replaced those picky proposals as just saying that the executive committee will establish a policy manual that will give guidance to committees on what are the kind of important things to consider. But as the wording would suggest, the changes would be leave more autonomy at the local level, which I've always thought was very appropriate. As far as debating this, we could debate it all in one. We could divide the question, but I'll leave that up to you. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the issue? Mr. Swafford.
The membership committee and the affiliate committee look over all these changes. I think they're efficacious to us building our party outward. I don't think there's really anything controversial in there, but all these changes are positive for the board and everybody on the committee. So that gives you the confidence to the motion therein.
Thank you, Mr. Swafford. Is there anyone who would like to get him?
I do have a question. When it talks about the XCOM will make a policy manual with recommendations, those are recommendations, not requirements, is that right?
Yes, that's
Correct.
right. Yeah, we agreed that
Okay.
we would amend all of that verbiage by providing a policy manual with guidelines on how the county can
And we just,
but they're guidelines, they're not requirements.
They're more like guidelines.
Guidelines are great for good advice, and I like having guidelines that then we can figure out what we want to do ourselves. Yeah.
Yes,
So to my understanding, we would still want to go forward with approval of bylaws by the executive committee for recognition of county affiliate, but we are making that approval of bylaws maybe simpler or more open by making the bylaws require less.
yes, making the bylaws require less in terms of detail.
In terms of
For
detail, in
instance,
terms of specificity of like what structure they need to have and all of that.
Exactly, and more local control to these organizations.
And really streamlining it to that being the one thing that they have to do. There's no longer much other requirements other than literally submitting bylaws and having it approved. That just kind of getting that condensed into one action. So that's really.
Is there anyone who would like to speak against this?
I'm not against it, but I just want to say that since the Jefferson County affiliate was started, we've already been abiding by these amended rules the whole time. So.
We gotta watch that logo.
I got Kelly kind of heads too.
Motion to vote on?
All the votes, okay. So requires a 2/3 vote for adoption. Proposal number 2, all in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Passes easily with 2/3. So we've adopted another change to the bylaws. And someone's gonna have to modify that. What's proposal number 3? Mr. Lutterlow, were you going to handle this one too?
I can.
I know this has come up a number of times in the past. There's a clause in our bylaws that require the convention to always be held within 60 miles of Little Rock. And there are a lot of nice places around the state where we might want to have a convention, so that feels like it kind of ties our hands. But go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about it. We thought it would be nice that in even number of years, why does it have to be held within 60 miles of Little Rock? Why can't we have a convention in Texarkana or Bentonville, Jonesboro, Fayetteville? So, anywhere, Pine Bluff. You know, why don't we have our convention somewhere that doesn't see a libertarian convention? Maybe it's more. And if people that are libertarian minded, maybe come out to a convention because they live there, but they're never going to go to a convention in town. So, and it doesn't say that we have to include and have a convention in a different city. It just says that we can if we want to buy it.
Yeah, so this just basically opens up the option of in odd numbered years to have it elsewhere. The thought was to continue to have it on even numbered years in Little Rock because those are the years in which we nominate candidates. So we must bring everything together to the state capitol for that event. So thinking on that. But again, this is debatable, it is amendable. The proposal is fairly simple. Is there anyone who would like to comment? Today, suggest, Joe?
I told you when we came at large, I'd never vote for moving this particular rule, being biased and being in Pulaski County. But I do think this is a wonderful proposal to an odd number of years allow our state convention to move other places. I do think that it's advantageous to all of our wants and desires of the party to have it here pretty locally in the capital with an even number of years. But I think it's a great proposal to get some of our more surrounding areas and allow them some exposure to odd number of years whenever we're just doing some other things formally. So I'm actually in favor of this surprising stuff.
All right, is there anyone who's left this? Well,
It's not, I'm not opposed, it's a question. Given we're so far along with all the technology we have, for remote, et cetera, is there an option for those who couldn't make it to possibly do something virtually with it, if nothing else than voting on various proposals and possibly watch a stream if we have the option when you can't drive 6 hours to the opposite corner of the state?
That is an issue that has been considered, and as a matter of fact, I think we got to get up to that next, as a matter of fact. We did adopt a temporary change to the bylaws this year that under the COVID circumstances that would have allowed us to allow remote participation. In the end, we decided not to exercise that and continue to be in person. It would require some rethinking of our voting structure and how we potential people and things like that. I do think it's something worthwhile considering as we move forward. And that's one of the reasons we are having officer elections today. We'll have a new executive committee. We'll be appointing a new bylaws committee that can look at some issues like that. It might help bring us up to date.
Apologies for monopolizing my questioning. Is there a proxy system that we might implement?
There is no proxy voting allowed overtly in the bylaws. Yeah. That would be by right. Size of things. Yes, it's good.
Could I propose that we change the lingo a little bit more to state in odd numbers and be anywhere else that the committee designates?
And so you're proposing to amend to make it more specific about the even number of years being at a location that anyone or that as selected by the executive committee.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we could come up with a better wording of that. But is there a second for that proposal?
I second that. I really think that the intent is important to document in this.
Very well, very well.
I would also add, to eliminate, I would never repeat this, I don't want to sound like I'm like, screw the capital city, but I'm thinking even odd numbered years, we shouldn't be in Little Rock. I didn't say Conway, I said Little Rock.
Why just Little Rock?
I think outside of the city limits of Little Rock in odd numbered years.
Okay.
Must be held outside of.
Must be held outside.
Actually, can I?
Yes.
So I think if we did it to where it rotated every odd year on each organized affiliate county. So that way the county that was in charge of that odd number year would pick the location and help facilitate where the best place in that county would be.
Would you consider district over county?
Okay.
District.
Now, just since this issue has come up, let me fill you on some of the discussion that went on at the meeting when we discussed this. There were various proposals to say something positive about the odd numbered years. There was a proposal to make it rotate around the congressional districts by some sort of a formulaic pattern. I think our final conclusion here when we came up with this wording was to provide as much flexibility for future executive committees as possible, rather than tie the hands of committees that have yet to be born, elected at least, as to where the convention is going to be. That was what we wanted to avoid in the first place, was to stop that monopoly on having to be within the city of Little Rock or within 60 miles.
It could be in Pine Bluff and be within 50 miles.
Yeah, there are locations within 60 miles that aren't Little Rock, that's true, but now, I will interpret the motion on the floor is to amend, and the amendment is to say, to add in odd numbered years, the state convention, what?
Must not be in Little Rock.
Must not be in Little Rock, is that what the word is? Spencer, this is yours.
Will the gentleman accept a friendly amendment with amendment?
Sure.
There are 75 counties in Arkansas. Some of them, even when we get an affiliate there, may not have facilities for this kind of convention, especially when we grow that large. May we suggest that in odd number of years, convention shall be held in a rotating congressional district?
Yeah.
That works?
I think it's fair enough.
Okay, so
I agree to the point, yeah, there will be.
By the time we get big enough, there's some counties just can't hold that number of people.
Well, I just think you're tying your hands because you can't do it.
Yeah, that was something I was wanting to jump in real quick. Do we even need to get this specific? Why can't we decide each year where we're gonna have it? I mean, does it, I guess I wanna ask, what what is beneficial about getting this specific in the bylaws? Can it not just be decided each year? If we say, hey, you can't have it in Little Rock on those years for some great reason, we want to have it there. If it's specific to that time, well, we don't know the future. So I guess I just want the body to consider that, and I'm asking a general question about it. What benefits us to be so specific about it?
I kind of agree with that.
And so, Hannah, have you have comments on that? Yes.
Can I make a motion to vote on it as worded?
At this point, we've had an amendment proposed. So we'll vote on the amendment and then go back to the main motion.
Okay.
So the amendment is to add a sentence that would say that in odd number of years, the state convention held on a rotating basis around the 4 congressional districts of the state. And maybe,
Let's do that first, sir.
maybe we'll, before we vote on the final amendment, we'll have the secretary read back the exact language that will appear in the minutes to make sure we have it. Mr. Mears.
I don't know for certain if this is completely in order right now, but it worries me that we might be having convention on the borders of the state because that is the best way to alienate everybody on the far side of the state and give them the furthest drive possible. What if we just considered bumping up the number 60? Instead of doing within 60 miles of Little Rock, make it 80, make it 100, make it, just something like that, where we're still focusing on being central to the state in some way without moving all the way to Texarkana.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. That would be a separate amendment after we address the witness on the table.
Can you suggest a change to the wording of the amendment that we're talking about?
Yes.
Just say can be or may be.
You can amend the amendment. So you have an amendment to the amendment. Yes.
I'm gonna wait till after we consider this amendment, but I'm gonna move to just strike all the words after state convention and just say we have to have a convention. That's it. That would be my amendment.
I like that.
Why not just simplify it? Why not just simplify it? Or let's consider it now, let's multiply it. I'm gonna send my amendment then.
Mr. Swafford.
We got it here with our limit here and everything. I think getting more specific about it, we're gonna spend more time on something that's really not gonna affect us too much. The reason for the 60 miles is we have the more central capitals in all of the United States. And it's easy for everybody to meet here. We also have the most population by far. Literally, Pulaski County has the half of the second district's population. The reason for the 60 miles is contingent to a lot of those things. I think if we start, you're going to have a committee that's going to listen to you. If you don't feel like that we listened to this last time around, maybe that's something to consider in the elections. But anything that you're wanting to do as far as like putting in another congressional district every year, if you simply tell your executive committee that, they're going to listen to you. So we could sit here and talk about the minutia and have an amendment to an amendment to an amendment to an amendment, and we could do all that for another 2 hours, or this probably does everything efficacious to what we want to do. And if you just communicate with your executive committee like Libertarians do, this is minimal rules and maximum freedom. So with that being said, I would probably say that I would vote to just do the amendment or to vote on the amendment as is, and after we any concessions for the current amendments. I think that's correct. Can I make a motion to table the current amendment? We can move on to other amendments we're thinking about this.
I think we need to dispense with the one that's on the table.
Or vote on it or
We should
whatever.
vote on it, yeah. Call the vote then. Any objection to calling the vote on the amendment? Okay, so the amendment, Mr. Jupp, can we make sure that we have this exactly?
Well, as you phrase it, the motion is to address odd number years, specifically rotating among congressional districts.
Right, so we'll have, in odd numbered years, the state convention shall rotate among congressional districts. That sounds good. Okay. So this would require a majority vote to approve the amendment to the proposal. All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? All right, the motion is not, or the amendment is not accepted. So we're back to the main motion. This is what's on the table again. I believe there's probably going to be a proposal to amend. Mr. Swafford?
I would like to call a vote on motion as proposed right now.
With an announced amendment, I would rather hear the amendment.
I think that Mr. Gilbert is right on that. Mr. Mears had already suggested that he had a proposal to, let's consider that.
I'd like that motion to raise 60 to, say, 100. And I'd like, if anybody else has any feelings on that, I'd like to entertain amendments to that amendment.
Okay, the motion is to raise 60 to 100. Is there a second for that motion before we discuss? Second, okay. Dr. Fletcher.
Since the emphasis on the Little Rock is the motivation you made was because you nominated candidates that year, candidates be read as the state convention is to be held in Little Rock. Why the 60 miles? If the emphasis on the capital.
It allowed for Conway last time, being a large population area within close to the capital. A little bit of variance.
I was not a part of the committee that drafted the original bylaws, but I suspect it was to address the concern that was raised earlier that some faction could hold the convention in a distant corner of the state, making it difficult for people from elsewhere to attend. That's my guess. So we have a second for the motion to change 60 from 100. Is there any discussion further on that?
I don't have a map in front of me, but my experience says that that's going to be about 80% of the state if we bump that up to 100. Well, 75% of the state. If we bump that up to 100 miles, that covers from Harrison to Helena to Ozark. That's a rather large circle of the state, and that pretty much. Yeah, well, it excludes all the borderlands of the state and kind of nullifies the whole point.
I go 200, then we can include fast. I'll just skip all that.
Caleb.
I have a question about the current motion. The current motion would simply amend the 60 miles to raise it to 100 miles, but it would not affect it would only affect the convention in even number of years, is that correct?
That is my understanding, that we're working with what's on the screen, with just one number changed. Any other questions, comments, discussion?
I did just use a map drawing tool to find out what 100 miles is. It is most of the state, pretty much excluding Texarkana, Fayetteville.
Suppose Mississippi County might be out of the range as well. And Chico County. Mr. Evans?
Well, we just went through this whole bylaws change to kind of give us all more freedom, and I think what I would propose here is the same thing. I think if we're getting that specific, like Joe was saying, the committees can handle this stuff. I trust the XCOM to handle this. We already know it's going to be in Arkansas, so it's kind of redundant to say, oh, hey, it's 80 miles from the capital. Well, we know that we're in Arkansas, so I'm going to move to just strike all the language after state convention. After later, that'll be
after shall be held.
Okay, that's a later thing. That's not.
Just reminding people so they know what I'm going to put on the table.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to vote on the amendment.
Call the vote, okay. So the amendment is to change 60 miles to 100 miles. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? All right, that amendment does not pass. Before we move to the final vote, Lee has indicated that he had another proposal to make. Lee Evans, you're going to make one more suggestion here to amend the proposal.
Yeah, my amendment would be to strike all the language after state convention. We can figure out each year exactly where we want to have it. What's the problem with that? It's maximum freedom. It's libertarian. Let's just figure it out each year.
Okay, so the proposal is to change, to strike everything after the first state convention.
I don't see the point of getting that specific. I really don't. We'll
Right on.
figure it out each year.
Can I amend Mr. Evans' amendment?
Well, first of all, we do have a second that was here.
Yes.
I heard you gave us some approval. All right, anyone would like to speak against it? We'd like to try to balance things out. Everyone seems to think.
Oh, yeah, let's strike that too. Oh, hey, wait. Letterlow's got a great idea, so we don't even need to say each year prior to July 1st. That's still too specific.
We do what we want.
No, we need the whole thing. We need it up there. At time and place determined by the state executive committee, the parties of the state convention. That's it. Why do we need any more than that? We got well, we know we're in Arkansas.
No, that's not.
All right, order. Let's
Each year. So yeah, Chris is right. So let's keep each year, get rid of prior to July 1st and strike after state convention. That would be my opinion.
Okay, so you've added the strike prior to July 1st clause to your proposal.
Yes. Yeah, well, you know, I gotta lean on the people who've been here longer than me and listen to them. They actually make sense.
Howard's been recognized already.
Yes.
So my thought is, I'm in support of the proposal as written, without any amendments that I've heard so far. And the reason is because we have to be at a state convention to take an executive committee, right? So the reason one is central is so we don't have one executive committee that controls a certain part of the state and alienate the other parts of the state from influencing the state executive committee, which is who decides where the committee is going to be. So I'm in favor of the proposal as written without the current.
Matt touched on my issues with changing where we have the location, central versus on the border. So my problem with it is right now having the location central, an even number of years allows anyone who wants to nominate to drive at most 4 hours. I mean, farthest part of the state, 4 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours.
Something like that.
Depends on how fast you drive.
If we take away the bylaw that says that it has to be in Little Rock for even after years, my concern is that there might be people who say you live in Fayetteville and we go to Texarkana. Now you've just doubled the distance. It's an 8-hour trip. So it's inconveniencing more people, and it's inconveniencing people more because of the time difference. That's my concern. That's why I'm supporting it as written.
All right, thank you. Joe?
I love the spirit of my buddy Lee's amendment, but I like the language that's written there. There are reasons why we have the 60 mile per, as Rich just stated. I really think this gives us maximum freedom with very limited structure. This is just for structure, everybody. It's not to contain anybody, but it's to give us a basis for things. No reasons for July 1st, and stuff like that, so that you don't kick the can down the road and we end up having a last minute convention in December. I mean, these are very small provisions that just give us a guideline for, hey, do it this time, do it kind of here. And I think it, as written, gives us, again, the maximum amount of freedom, just a small amount of structure. And again, your ex-com is going to listen to you. So I'll be voting against the amendment, and I'll be voting in favor if it doesn't pass what we have.
I'd like to speak to the July 1st. I think that needs to stay as far as like, if we're going to be running candidates for office, we don't need to be having a convention later in the year where if they don't win that garner of support for the party, then they've lost all that time and or they've lost all that energy of that time.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good middle ground. It's the middle of the year by the time we decide on having a convention, whatever, any given year. But I think it's very important for any candidate that we are going to run that needs Libertarian nomination backing, that they have that ample time to start getting on the ground running pretty much.
Okay.
I think you guys are right. I've reconsidered. I don't want to, let's not do it. Let's keep it as it is. Let's vote on it.
Well, okay, then I was going to say there were really two parts to what you wanted to do, is strike the second sentence and the July 1st. Spencer was suggesting we leave the July 1st in. Are you withdrawing your motion?
Well, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, that's where I'm get really fired up at the moment, and but you gotta
Michael came over here and talked to me, and he said, you know, it really does prevent one county from being able to exercise too much power, because say they took over everything, Benton County did, for instance, just as an example, because they're really growing right now. And then they can say, well, we only want to have it in Bentonville. It would make it really hard for people to get up there. So I reconsidered, I like the language as it is. Let's vote on it as it is. Everybody's good with that.
I am concerned about the outcome. All right, so I guess with that amendment withdrawn, we're back to the main motion, which is to adopt as worded. Okay, who's gonna hold the question, I think was general approval for that. This requires a 2/3 vote to adopt as written, proposal number 3. Did you have a question? Oh, we just voted already. All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? All right, we have 2/3. I guess we still have about a couple more here. One more, number 4. This one was really a team effort. I think Brian Leach suggested we graded the idea, but it might have been Elias. Lutterlow was in on it. Chris Olson wrote a section of this. So we kind of crafted this idea that membership eligibility is currently at the age of 18 years old. However, there are some offices, public offices, that someone could run for that the requirement is that they be 18 years of age as of the date they take office. So we could be denying membership to people who are eligible to run for public office, and yet they wouldn't be a valid member of the party, and therefore could not be nominated to run for that office. That was the main justification for the thought of changing 18 to 16, being the age of majority, so to speak, for joining the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. So that required changes to a couple of sections. The membership eligibility, the primary one, regarding non-discrimination in membership, we had to change that to reflect the change in ages. And then Mr. Olson suggested that we really need to have, as members of the executive committee, those who have the legal right to sign contracts. And so we might want to put a tighter restriction on those who are between the ages of 16 and 18, that they need to serve, they need to be 18 to serve on the executive committee. So there's really 3 parts to this. Mr. Olson, would you like to speak to that?
18 to serve an officer. You should be 16 to be district rep.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
to be a chair, vice chair, secretary, somebody who's not who calls upon us to serve, or if you're some of these smart guys who they will respond for actions. What they have to do.
Very good.
Well, the other thought behind it was, if we lower it to 16, let's start some young libertarians groups in high school. Let's get some kids motivated. I'm coming up, there were young Democrats and young Republican clubs when I was in school. So let's get some young libertarians started.
Oh, yeah, and I want to speak in favor, real quick, being out petitioning. I meet kids all the time that are under 18 that are excited about libertarianism, and we need a way to get them on board. So I'm totally in support of this bylaw.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
Does that mean like the county chair can be 16?
No, this only refers to the executive committee of the state Libertarian Party of Arkansas. Well, I mean, you could have county rules that could establish, team memberships or something like that, but they would not be recognized by the state without the adoption of
Well,
these
I think
changes.
you have somebody that's under age, under 18, they're kind of chairman, maybe somebody's with somewhere.
Yeah, but there could be an issue with that at the county chair level, that's true. But we've already kind of withdrawn our level of mandating the behavior of the county committees, so.
That might be something that's policy.
That might be something to put in the policy.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Just look at questions.
Mr. Mayor.
This is a trick question. I know. So is it legal to take little contribution from someone
Is it legal to take political contributions from someone under 18?
If they can be members, they have to pay for the membership.
They have to pay a $10 membership.
thing.
They have to have their parents' permission slip or something. I don't know, that's a question. I'm not even sure.
I suppose if you're under 18, maybe just striking the news. And that might encourage more young people to get involved. Then they start your 18.
I guess the issue here though is, remember the original intent was to give people the opportunity to run for office who are otherwise qualified to take office when they turn 18, but they're not old enough to be nominated by the everybody to run for office. Mr. Wade, we've heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion on the legality issue of that. We haven't looked into that yet. I would suggest, I guess, on that note, if we pass this, that is contingent upon verifying the legality of that.
Age of consent in Arkansas 16.
Well, you pay taxes when you're 16 if you have a job.
Age of consent is 16, so you have sex, but you contribute to the political party.
Well, I'm saying, like,
I looked at the law.
Or lady has something to contribute?
So this is the law apparently for individual who is under 18 years old may make contributions to candidates and political committees subject to limitations if the decision to contribute is made knowingly and voluntarily by the minor. The funds, goods, or services contributed are owned or controlled by the minor, received from a trust for which he or she is a beneficiary, or funds withdrawn by the minor from a financial account open and maintained in his or her name, and the contribution is not made using funds given to the minor as a gift for the purpose of making the contribution, and is not in any way controlled by another individual. So you can, but there's caveats to it.
Okay, so I think we would obviously be bound to comply with those restrictions if we adopted this, but it does sound like it is possible. Yes, Mr. Bordeaux.
To address that, perhaps I would offer to them to add a part 4 that can be treated like the severability clause in any standard contract. A part 4 that says all provisions of this section shall be subject to applicable laws. And if any one provision is found illegal or is nullified, all the other provisions will stand. Well, that's it.
There is a severability clause overall.
Then I withdraw the amendment.
I have a quick question or statement. Is it possible to just say that they could be a member with no monetary contribution, just to simplify this, since we're kind of unsure on the monetary part? Just have the bylaws say they could be a member with no monetary contribution if under 18.
That would require revisiting the membership status clauses, and I think it's really more than we can fight on.
So now we can't consider that for now. Okay. Just a thought.
Just to address the concerns that we have in the financial, and Lee just read and showed all the restrictions. Those restrictions apply to everybody, whether you're a minor or not. I can't sign up my wife or say, I'm giving you this money so that you can join and give to this politician. It has to come freely from her. That's already in the books legal. It's the same whether you're 29 or whether you're 16. There are no restrictions any different than anyone else for someone who's 16 years old to make a political contribution or to join a party. So if that's our concern of why we want to amend it, it's not really a concern because those restrictions are the same as the restrictions that have been on all of us.
Why can't we have like a junior party under the, as us as their mentor to teach them legalities, to teach them civics that they're not learning in school anymore, and go from there. And when they turn 18, then they can make their own decisions.
That kind of arrangement would be possible under the current bylaws, to have like junior memberships established or youth clubs associated. But this would specifically change the bylaws to allow those to vote.
That also would address the issue of them turning 18, having been a member of the party for, 60 days before they're allowed to do it.
No, you just need to be a member of the party to run as a candidate. So that's the restriction is that
The restriction is sometimes you need a year to file before the election. And
you can't file or get our nomination unless you've been a member. So they're eligible to run for office if they're 18 by election day. So a 17-year-old wants to run because they'll be 18 on November 4th or whatever the election day is. They're not allowed to run as a libertarian because we won't allow them to become members until they're 18, which means they couldn't have gotten a nomination in the first place. This allows them to get our nomination to be able to run for office as long as they're going to be 18 by election day, which is what the state law allows.
Great point. I move to vote on the bylaw as written.
Second.
Any objections to moving to a vote? All right, so as proposed, we're voting on proposal number 4. All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? All right, 2/3, that passes. So we have another change to the bylaws. Now, there's one other that I actually probably should have done this one first, but now we're in the swing of things, which is bylaws today. One of the things that the executive committee did over the winter months as we were planning ahead for trying to plan a conference with uncertainty around the pandemic is we wrote a temporary provisions about being allowed to have virtual participation, a hybrid convention, maybe even up to and including an entirely remote convention. We thought that it might be necessary. The rules about adopting temporary changes to bylaws are very strict. They have to be a 7/8 vote of the executive committee. We had to consult with our legal counsel to say that, yes, this is really necessary, that we give this consideration. And so we adopted these changes to allow for the possibility of a remote or hybrid convention. And in the end, we decided not to execute that option. So it's just sitting out there. Now, one of the things that the bylaws very clearly state is that if the executive committee does adopt temporary bylaws, it does come up for a vote at the next state convention as to whether to approve it as a permanent change to the bylaws or to just let it lapse. If it lapsed, then it cannot be brought up as a temporary change to the bylaws anytime within the next year. But of course, if there was a separate new public emergency, that would be a separate incident. So I see no reason that this could not be done again if we found ourselves in the unfortunate circumstance we did and the uncertainty around this day here today. So the proposal on the table is whether to accept this temporary change to the bylaws as a permanent change to our bylaws. I will step back and say my personal recommendation is we do not adopt this as a permanent change to the bylaws. I think it was intended to be temporary to get us through a situation that none of us wanted to be in. And that if we want to start thinking about changing the nature of our conventions in the future, we should do that in a more orderly, reasoned approach rather than kind of a temporary amendment to the bylaws. Okay, now I'm stepping back to the chair. Mr. Morgan.
Question to clarify, if things change in the next year by the next year's convention, it would or would not be possible for the X-Com to readopt these if there was a further emergency, another way, the plague of locusts.
I think if there, I would, my opinion is that if it was a new emergency, a different situation, then it would be a different adoption of bylaws. It would require a different approach, and therefore would not be considered the same thing again. I certainly hope that that's not.
I'm anticipating here's that maybe splits in that event. A different strain of COVID, is that a different situation or not?
Good question. Good question. Yes.
Okay, so I actually put most of this together, so I'll speak one of this in drafter. I agree with Dr. Facco for the most part that for right now, it's not something that I would adopt as a temporary amendment. I think having the online capabilities is something we definitely need to do. But even with talking with Casey after this got adopted initially, there's a lot of credentialing issues that we need to consider. And this only allows for an online option if there is a state of emergency. I think we should have an online option that we can invoke without any qualifications for full time. I agree. So I think there's a lot of things we need to tweak and really resolve before we actually adopt this.
Yeah, I want to second basically what you guys are saying, that
it's kind of like when they passed the temporary taxes, you don't want to make it permanent. It's the same, I feel kind of the same way about this, let's go forward. And I agree with Luke that we should make remote voting something that can happen. Let's figure out how to do it separate from the COVID situation. We can do that going forward. So I want
should be on the agenda.
it should, absolutely. I'll second what both you guys said.
Very good. Mr. Strawford.
Just to further what these guys are saying, I was part of the executive committee that helped pass this provisionally, and I think that it's something that we need to have permanently in our bylaws for a potential remote option. It's something we need to revisit and we need to do a little bit more thinking on and look for refining. This was for an emergency clause. I think we can do away with it for now, and that's going to be something we're going to bring up in the first bylaws meeting, and we'll have probably for next convention to be voted on, or for the executive committee to install and then be voted on. So I think that we can pretty easily, we're doing what we need to do at the time, but we can dispense with this and move on with the idea that we're going to explore that in the future and very quickly.
Yes.
I think before I would even consider options of that, we need to define national. We get a remote option because climate change and a better natural emergency.
Did everyone hear that? I'm using comment. I hope you heard it back in the room. That a national emergency could be considered climate change.
Since this is not going to pass, can we just?
You're calling a question? Thank you, sir. All right, so the motion on the table is whether to adopt this as a permanent change to our bylaws. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. All right, it goes down in 30 feet. Yeah, a housekeeping announcement.
So the hotel is working on it. The bathrooms here are running out of soap on this side, which I don't know if that's a big problem for you, but that's a big problem in my eyes. And so if you go right around our room here, basically on the outside, and go right around to right over here, there are bathrooms with soap. We ask that you use those. We're not going to check anybody, but please wash your hands.
It's a guideline, right?
So it's a guideline. Watching you. But yeah, so these bathrooms over here have soap. These do not right now, for your convenience. And everyone else.
And speaking of restrooms, this would probably be a good time to take a short recess before we move on to the next item on the agenda, the election of officers. So is there a motion to take a 10-minute recess? Seconded. Any objection? We recess for 10 minutes.
This is usually
I see something that
I have seen a few of like Joey Diaz. I'll take your offer. I'll eat mine. You got me good. Well, that makes me so. I haven't